The first lie was carved into stone. It hung above the transit tunnel on a slab of polished concrete, letters drilled deep and painted with light-reactive ink so they glowed a dull, holy blue. We toil, they fight, we endure. Kira read it every morning. You couldn't not read it. The letters stared into your eyes as the train doors hissed open and the work sirens blared. Children grew up quoting it. Old people died mouthing it like a prayer. She had never questioned it. Not really. Until the day the same slab of concrete said something else. It was a shift adjustment day, which meant the city lights had been dimmed 2% to encourage productive rest cycles. Kira always noticed. Numbers were the bones of her world. She had spent 14 years in records harmonization, smoothing the history of the underground so it wouldn't crack. She stepped off the transit car with the same crowd of gray-jacketed workers, the hum of generators vibrating through the soles of her boots. The air tasted faintly of metal and cabbage stew. She looked up. The stone slab above the tunnel gleamed its usual blue, but the words were wrong. We toil. They fall. We endure. Kira blinked hard. The siren's howl washed over her. People pushed past, shuffling forward, heads bowed. Nobody looked up. Nobody hesitated. She did.
Move.
Someone grunted behind her, elbowing her ribs. Kira stepped aside, still staring. She knew that phrase. We toil. They fight. We endure. Every recorded speech by a regime voice used it. It was in the school primers, in the pledge every child recited before they learned to read. She could have written it in her sleep. They fight, not they fall. She rubbed her eyes. The letters stared back, unchanging. Maybe I misremembered it, she thought, and the thought itself made her heart stutter. Misremembering state text was unlikely, dangerous even. But the mind played games in the dim light. And besides, she had never worked on this slab. Structure inscriptions were handled by Central Communications. She forced herself to turn away and join the river of workers moving towards Sector 9. The words followed her. They fall. The underground city didn't have a name. Names belonged to things that might be lost, and the regime didn't believe it could be lost. It was simply the city. It stretched down rather than out, stacked in rings around the central power shafts. Kira lived in level 23, slept in a standard 9-bunk habitation unit, and worked in a records harmonization bay on level 11. Every wall was labeled. Every corridor was monitored. Every day was scheduled to the minute. The only unlabeled thing was time. Time itself had been cut and trimmed and glued together so many times that Kira sometimes wondered if the Great War above had been going on for 17 years, or 70, or 700. Officially, it had started 39 years ago, officially changed often. In her bay, Kira's job was to make sure it always had never changed. She sat at her terminal, the screen casting a pale glow on her face. A thin metal band circled her throat, warm where it touched skin, the compliance collar that monitored pulse, voice stress, and neural patterns. Everyone wore one once they turned 12. Most forgot it was there. Kira never did, not fully.
Operator 11K,
Droned the overhead voice. A genderless, toneless sound pumped from speakers in the ceiling.
you are 3 minutes behind expected productivity, correct?
Correcting?
Kira murmured automatically. Her collar hummed faintly in approval. She dragged a file toward her. The harmonization interface swept a grid of text across her screen. Archival news reports, citizen interviews, policy announcements, all connected to one phrase blinking red at the top. Discrepancy, Battle of Glass Fields. The file opened, showing 2 versions of the same event. One from 5 years ago. Our soldiers, brave and tireless, hold the glass fields against the surface hordes. The sky is ash. The ground trembles with artillery. We stand with them in spirit, our labor their lifeblood. And one updated last cycle. Our soldiers, brave and tireless, reclaimed the glass fields from the surface hordes. The sky burns with victory light. The ground sings with our machines. Their sacrifice was not in vain. The date stamp was identical, the wording almost,
Adjustment in narrative arc required.
said the voice.
Civilians in the lower levels have developed increased anxiety responses related to prolonged stalemate. War morale trending at 0.3% below acceptable baseline.
Kira knew the protocol. She highlighted the old passages and routed them for deletion. One flick of her finger, and the city would never again remember the glass fields as a place where soldiers still fought and bled. It would have always been a victory. It had never been anything else. Her whole job was this, pressing that one subtle lever between was and never was. She hesitated. They fall. The words on the stone slab echoed in her head, clashing with everything inside the file. Victories, reclaims, forward pushes. The war stories had always followed a simple pattern, brutal, endless, but never hopeless. Always trending upward. Falling didn't belong. Operator 11K, the voice said.
You are hesitating.
Just verifying cross-references.
Kira said quickly, fingers moving over the keys, bringing up old war bulletins. She expected to see confirmation of what she remembered. We toil, they fight, we endure. Instead, every historical document contained the phrase, we toil, they fall, we endure. Her throat went dry. She opened school primers from 20 years ago, propaganda posters from the first year of the war, transcript of inaugural regime speeches. Every one of them. They fall. They fall. They fall. Kira scrolled faster, her heart banging against the collar. Her mind felt like a floor that had shifted a few centimeters out of alignment, just enough that every step caught the toe. No, I know this. It's wrong. It's wrong, the other way. But there it was, across decades, across history. The voice hummed.
Discrepancy resolved?
Yes.
Kira whispered, without knowing which discrepancy it meant. She deleted the older version of the Glassfields bulletin. The screen chimed green.
Good citizen?
The voice said, and clicked off. Kira sat staring at her hands. Maybe I'm tired, she thought. Maybe they changed the phrase last night and retro-corrected every record, and my head didn't sync right with the dream feed. That happened sometimes. People woke up with headaches, vague shadows of things that didn't fit. A street that had always turned left, now turning right. A slogan sounding off. A statue's face slightly different. Normal. Natural. The regime was always refining reality. The voice said so. Still, Kira's fingers shook as she called up the daily war bulletin feed, more out of superstition than need. A voice played, clearer and higher than the ambient system voice, one of the regime voices the city knew and trusted. Their words piped everywhere, hab units, cafeterias, work bays. The screens above the text showed only a silhouette in uniform, stars glittering on a chest that might not exist.
And so,
The voice was saying.
we give thanks for our warriors above, for every drop of sweat and blood they spend to keep the surface scum at bay. While they fall, we endure. While they hold the line, we build the future below.
They fall. Kira cut the audio and sat very still. The words didn't sound wrong, not really. Not to the part of her brain that had been hearing them since childhood. But there was another part, a splinter lodged deep, that screamed. It used to be fight. I know it. I know it the way I know my own name. The regime didn't allow personal logs. Officially, because they cluttered the memory space needed for industrial focus. Unofficially, everyone knew the real reason. Private memories were dangerously close to private histories, and history was the regime's property. Kira didn't keep a journal. That would have been suicidal. She kept something more primitive. Under her bunk, beneath the thin mattress and the standard-issue thermal sheet, there was a hairline crack in the composite flooring. You could only see it if you lay on your back and tilted your head just so, letting the overhead light skim across the floor. She had found it when she was 10, tracing the patterns in the floor to pass time while the others slept. At 12, when her collar warmed and locked around her throat, she had pried the crack open with a contraband table knife and widened it to the thickness of a fingernail. Inside, wrapped in a scrap of plastic, she kept a tiny, forbidden thing, a square of old packaging. She had found it in the waste slots during a work rotation in the food prep sector. A corner of glossy material with print on one side, oily residue on the other. The recycling grates missed it. The camera above that chute had been dead for 63 seconds due to a power fluctuation she'd later see in a diagnostic file. The packaging was ancient. You could tell by the colors, too bright, too frivolous. The words on it were short and strange, crispy sky chips, bursting with flavor. And below, in even stranger script, above or below, we share the same sky. Kira had run her thumb over those words 1,000 times. Same sky. It was the most treasonous thing she owned. The regime's story was simple. Above ground was a poisoned battlefield where the enemy, those who had refused unity under the regime's protection, scrabbled for survival in the ruins. The soldiers of the regime fought them there in a noble, endless struggle. Anyone born below who went up died in seconds from radiation and toxins. Below, life had meaning. Work, duty, order. The chips wrapper suggested a before. A world where above and below weren't enemies. A world where enough people had lived in both to warrant a slogan. Kira slid the scrap from its hiding place now. The dorm was night cycle quiet, which meant most of the bunks were filled with unconscious bodies, their minds plugged into the dream feed of glorious war footage and orderly productivity patterns. Kira's neighbors snored softly. She held the scrap close, letting the dim blue wall light graze the letters. Above or below, we share the same sky. They fight. They fall. Her head ached. Something inside her wanted to split.
Just sleep.
She whispered to herself, folding the plastic away.
Sleep, and let the dream feed smooth it over.
She had almost slid it back into the floor when she saw something new. In the bottom corner, where a smear of dried oil had always obscured the print, there was a tiny, perfect glyph she'd never noticed. A symbol like an eye, lines radiating. Under it, in text so small she'd never bothered to read, product of Regime Ventures, Surface Division. She stared. Surface. Division. Her hand shook. The plastic crackled loud in the silence. The regime has a surface division. Of course it did. Someone had to coordinate the war. Someone had to manage the supply pipelines from below, oversee the weapons and food they produced. But companies didn't print their slogans on food for soldiers. They printed it for consumers, for everyday people. Above or below, we share the same sky. She bit her knuckle until she tasted copper.
No.
She whispered into her blanket.
No, no, no.
Because if the regime had printed this for the surface, that meant there had been a time when the regime and the people above weren't at war, which meant the war might be.
Citizen in bunk 23-9.
A mechanical murmur said directly above her.
Auditory sensor has detected stress vocalization. Do you require sedation?
Kira froze. The wall speaker over her bunk clicked softly, listening.
I had a dream.
She forced out.
About the raids. It's nothing. I don't require sedation.
A pause.
Heart rate elevated,
The system said.
However, levels remain within acceptable range for unassisted calm. Dream feed will adjust current content to reinforce stability. Sleep well, productive citizen.
The speaker clicked off. After a while, Kira realized the chips wrapper was still clutched in her fist. She slid it back into the floor crack with numb fingers. She didn't sleep, but she lay very still, eyes open, watching the shadows of other people's dreams flicker across the bunk frames. Above or below, we share the same sky. The next day, Sector 9 had a morale assembly. Assemblies were mandatory. They were what the regime did when numbers blipped in the wrong direction. Too many people requesting sedation adjustments, too many whispered complaints in the cafeteria, too many production errors. The voice never called them punishments, but everyone knew. Kira filed into the assembly hall with the rest of Level 11's workers, her steps lost in the shuffle of hundreds of boots. The ceiling was low, lined with blackout screens. The air smelled of disinfectant and worn fabric. On the stage, a banner unfurled from the ceiling to the floor, projected from hidden emitters. Glory to the regime. Glory to the war above. The crowd muttered the words like a cough. Kira stood near the back, collar humming faintly as it synced her vitals with the hall's monitors. The central screen crackled on. A silhouette appeared. A regime voice avatar, same as always. No face, only the suggestion of a human shape in uniform, light glinting where metals should be.
Good citizens of Level 11,
The voice said.
we assemble today in unity and gratitude.
The usual opening, the usual cadence. Kira mouthed the words along, not really listening.
For above, our brave warriors continue to fall.
Her head snapped up. The voice continued smoothly.
On our behalf, each drop of their blood waters the future we are building below. Each inch they gain or hold is purchased with the products of your labor.
On the banner, new icons appeared. Silhouettes of weapons, crates, grain, water, each labeled from below to above.
We toil.
The crowd murmured on cue.
They fall.
The voice said.
We endure.
The crowd finished. Kira said nothing. They fall, again, and again, and again. Suddenly she couldn't remember the phrase any other way, and that scared her more than anything.
We have updates from the front.
The voice intoned.
The surface scum have launched raids on the northern vent towers. Our soldiers have repelled them at great cost. Supplies must increase.
Images flashed on the screen, a blasted landscape, soldiers in heavy suits firing into billowing dust, dark figures swarming. Kira had seen countless images like it. Something in the background, behind the soldiers' helmets, caught her eye. She squinted. In the corner, half obscured by dust and movement, stood a structure. A tall, skeletal tower bristling with dishes and antennae, reaching up toward a sky that was more gray than black. She knew that tower. Not that exact one, maybe, but the design. It was a recycling intake spire, the kind they used down here to pull waste gases from the deeper levels and process them back into breathable air. The blueprints were in the database. She'd seen them. But why would the surface have one?
Remember,
The voice droned.
the enemy above cannot build such wonders. They scavenge. They steal. They destroy. Only the regime creates. Only the regime sustains life. They would tear it all down if not for our soldiers.
Kira's mouth went dry. The camera angle cut, switching to a close-up of a soldier's mask, cracked and bloodied. The tower disappeared. The screen replaced it with a glorious composite image of soldiers standing on a ridge, banner flapping.
Supplies must increase.
The voice repeated.
Food shipments from Level 11 will be raised by 14%. Production targets will adjust accordingly. It is an honor to support the war above. Say it with me.
It is an honor to support the war above.
The crowd chanted.
We toil.
They fall.
We endure.
This time, Kira heard how wrong it sounded. If they were always falling, how were they still fighting? Kira didn't decide to defect. That implied a sharp moment, a choice made at a crossroads. What happened instead was slower, a series of clicks in her mind, like locks being undone by an invisible hand, the slab over the transit tunnel, the slogan on the wrapper, the tower in the battlefield footage, and then, 3 days later, the shipment error. She was in records harmonization, sorting production manifests when the flag popped up, a bright yellow triangle, blinking. Routing anomaly. Food shipment. 7-LV 11-983. Destination. Confirm or correct. Shipments always had a destination code. A for above, B for below redistribution, C for central, which really meant above by way of central. There was no code for question marks. Kira opened the file. A manifest filled half her screen. Crates of nutrient paste, compressed vegetable bricks, filtered water, protein gels. enough to feed an entire battalion for a month according to the standard war provision chart. Destination field, blank, glitching. She tried to enter the code for above, a -01. The system rejected it, invalid route, check with supervisor. Supervisor meant a human, which meant explanation, which meant attention. Attention was a bad thing. Attention meant eyes on you. Questions about why you noticed.
The voice said food shipments must increase.
Kira murmured under her breath.
What happens to one mislabeled shipment? Nothing. It's just a file error.
Her collar warmed in warning. She stared at the manifest. Her fingers typed before her fear could stop them. Instead of a 01, she entered a diagnostic query into the destination field, something you weren't supposed to do, but the system didn't stop her fast enough. Trace path, 7-LV11-983. The screen flickered. For a heartbeat, the interface showed a map. Kira had never seen a map of the city. Maps were restricted access, but this looked close. A vertical diagram, levels stacked atop one another, a central shaft running through them, branch lines leading to distribution hubs. A bright line traced from level 11 up, up, up. Then, right before it reached the top, the line split. Half of it went to a node labeled A-01. The other half branched off to a side node with a label Kira had never seen before, not in any regime training material, not in any file. Surface Civilian Grid, Zone 3. Her chair tipped backward. She jerked so hard she nearly fell. The map blinked off. The screen went black for 1, 2, 3 seconds. Then, administrative override. You do not have access to this file. Please return to your assigned task, productive citizen. The voice slid into her ears like cold oil.
Operator 11-K, you have initiated an unauthorized trace command. Explain.
Kira's mouth was dust.
I thought it was a routing error,
She said.
I was trying to correct it.
A pause. The collar burned against her throat.
Stress pattern elevated.
The voice mused.
But no treason indicators detected. Your mistake is noted. This instance will be marked as a training opportunity.
Understood.
She whispered. The manifest vanished from her queue.
Remember,
The voice added.
all supplies marked for above go to our brave soldiers. There are no civilians on the surface. The war saw to that long ago.
The way it said it was too smooth, too fast, like an autoplay message. Kira's heart pounded. Surface Civilian Grid. She had seen it. For a moment, but that moment was real. The regime didn't waste processing power on hallucinations. Unless it did. No. Even if her eyes had lied, the wrapper still existed. The tower still stood in that war footage. A tower built to sustain life. And now, a label that said civilians. Civilians weren't soldiers. Civilians were people who just lived. Above or below, we share the same sky. The decision, when it finally crystallized, came from a place so quiet she almost missed it. She was sitting in the cafeteria, shoveling flavorless nutrition mash into her mouth, when the overhead screens flashed the daily casualty numbers. Surface War Front, 3,142 fallen today. Total fallen, 87,482,091. The numbers updated every day. They rose so steadily, Kira sometimes wondered if they were real or just a counter the regime spun to keep everyone afraid and grateful. At the next table, 2 workers argued in low voices.
I heard they breached the northern shield.
One muttered.
The enemy got into the vent systems. That's why they upped our shifts. My cousin said,
Your cousin talks too much.
The other said sharply.
Do you want to bring the eyes down on us? Just eat.
but what if they reach us? What if they break through? We'll be slaughtered, just like in the histories. That's what happened when we failed the regime before.
Kira knew which histories he meant, the ones she edited. She stared at the casualty counter until the numbers blurred. If soldiers fell by the thousands every day for decades, there should be no one left, unless new ones were made constantly, unless the surface was an endless machine that devoured people. Unless. The thought came like a flicker, like the glint of static on a dead screen. What if they're not falling at all? She almost laughed out loud. Of course they were. There were bodies in the footage, tears in voice broadcasts, raids repulsed at great cost, names carved into memorial walls. But the regime carved whatever it wanted. Records and documents are constantly changed, her training had said. Not in those words, of course. They'd called it narrative alignment. But she knew what it meant. She performed it. If the regime could adjust the past, why not the present? Why not the casualty counter? Why not the very existence of the war? She looked down at her bowl, at the gray mash she'd been told was made from root vegetables grown in deep hydroponic bays, fortified for soldiers' needs, at the faint flecks of color in it, little orange dots. Carrot. She knew carrot from her childhood education images. There had been stories of farm fields, sunlight on green leaves, dirt under nails. You didn't grow carrots underground. You could, technically, with enough light and water and soil. But the root bay allocations she'd seen in passing never included such luxury crops. Her spoon trembled.
What if it's all a loop?
Kira whispered, so quietly not even the audio sensors could catch it.
What if we're feeding them, and they're feeding us, and nobody up there is at war at all?
Above or below, we share the same sky. She set her spoon down. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not even sure, just a quiet, stubborn refusal to keep swallowing. She would find out, even if the knowing broke her. Nobody went to the surface. The last time someone tried, officially, was in the morale tales they told children. A foolish boy who climbed the maintenance ladders for adventure and died screaming when the toxic air touched his lungs. His family was mourned and, then, erased. There were, however, rumors. Rumors of the vent techs, workers assigned to the uppermost levels where the city's huge ventilation stacks reached toward the ceiling. They were overseen more closely than most. Their collars had extra bands. Their wings had no windows. But they were closer. They could feel breezes sometimes, people said. That alone made them strange. Kira wanted to request a transfer. That would have been obvious. Suspicious. Transfers from records were rare, and always downward. So instead, she did what she did best. She changed a record. The maintenance schedule of Level 11 had a glitch. She knew this because she put it there, a minor one, just enough to create a request for a specialized harmonization operator to assist with data corruption in the vent system logs on Level 1. The regime loved specialists, loved to plug them into problems like components in a machine. The request went up. 2 days later, her caller chimed with a priority assignment.
Operator 11K.
The voice said.
Your skills are required on Level 1. Prepare for elevation transit.
Her heart rattled against her ribs. She kept her face blank.
Yes, voice.
The elevator to Level 1 was nothing like the crowded worker lifts. It was clean, quiet, walls lined with smooth metal. A single camera eye stared down from the ceiling. Her collar synced with the lift's control, and the doors cycled shut. The floor hummed as the car rose. Numbers ticked past on the display. Kira had never gone below Level 8. She realized now she had also never gone above Level 11. Her whole life had been lived in a narrow vertical slice of humanity. The higher they rose, the cooler the air became. The hum of the generators shifted pitch, taking on a distant, hollow tone Kira had never heard. Her ears popped. The lift stopped. The doors sighed open onto Level 1. Level 1 wasn't brighter. That surprised her. In her mind, the highest level of the city was a halo around the regime's head, gleaming, clean, lit with a purer, whiter light. A place of authority. Instead, it looked industrial. The ceiling arched higher, yes, supported by thick ribs of concrete and steel. Pipes and cables clung to every surface. The air hummed with the rush of hidden machinery. A guard waited outside the lift. Real muscle, not just cameras. A tall person in matte gray armor, the stylized eye of the regime on their chest. Their face was hidden behind a smooth helmet. A rifle rested in their hands, pointed at the floor, but ready.
Operator 11K?
The helmet's speaker crackled.
Yes.
Kira said.
Follow.
They walked, Kira's boots echoing on the metal grating of the floor. Cameras tracked them like insects on the ceiling. The corridors here were less crowded, but the people she did see wore different collars, thicker, with additional modules that blinked red and green. Vent techs. They moved with a cautious stiffness, like people who had learned not to draw attention even to their footsteps. The guard led her into a control room. Banks of monitors covered one wall, each showing streams of data: airflow, pressure readings, filter efficiency, chemical composition. One screen showed a schematic of the vent towers rising through the city like stone trees.
Data corruption in the surface intake logs,
The guard said.
You're here to fix it. You will not access any other files.
I understand.
Kira said. That was fine. She only needed one. They left her with a single tech, an older woman with pale eyes and hands stained a permanent gray from handling filter cartridges.
I'm Supervisor A1 Delta.
The woman said.
Sit.
Kira sat at the terminal. Supervisor Delta watched her for a long moment, then turned away to adjust a dial. The collar around the woman's throat had a second ring, pulsing slow amber.
Begin.
Delta said. Kira called up the corrupted log. At first glance, it looked simple, a stream of intake reports, numbers shuddering at the edge of legibility. The system had flagged it as possible sabotage, which was why a record harmonizer had been summoned. The easiest sabotage of all was the truth. She let her fingers move in familiar patterns, smoothing the data, aligning the timestamps. At the same time, she ran a side query buried 3 layers deep, disguised as a checksum routine. Show me the external air readings for the last cycle, she asked the system silently. The numbers appeared. Oxygen, 20.9%. Nitrogen, 78.1%. Trace gases, standard. Toxin load, negligible. Radiation, baseline, baseline, baseline. It meant normal. It meant safe to breathe for extended periods. It meant that everything she had been told about the poisoned surface, the lethal air, the necessity of total enclosure. Lies. Her vision swam.
Problem.
Supervisor Delta's voice was mild, but the second collar ring brightened by a shade. Kira forced herself to breathe.
Just a stubborn block of corrupted code,
She said.
I'll need to cross-reference. May I see the intake camera feed?
Delta hesitated.
The external feeds are restricted.
She said.
Only the sound, then.
Kira said quickly.
Sometimes I can align rhythmic patterns, fans, intakes with the log signatures.
The older woman studied her. Something passed over her face, too fast to name, a twitch of the mouth, a flicker in the eyes. Then she turned back to the console and tapped a sequence. One of the monitors went black. Then it filled with gray. For a moment, Kira thought it was broken. Then the gray moved. It swirled, thinned, brightened. Clouds. She was looking at clouds, not the simulated ones they sometimes projected on the ceilings during morale weeks. These were messy, flawed, layers of gray and white, drifting and tearing, revealing behind them a blue so pale it hurt her eyes. Wind hissed past the microphone. Something dark swooped across the screen. Kira flinched. It was no weapon, no machine. It was a bird. It rode the wind in easy arcs, its wings catching the light. It cried once, a raw, sharp sound, and disappeared out of frame. Kira couldn't breathe. The camera wasn't pointed straight up. She could see the edge of something in the lower half of the image. A metal rim. Beyond it, the hint of structures reaching toward the sky. Towers, antennae. One of them with a familiar lattice shape. A recycling intake spire, The same kind as in the war footage, except here there was no battle, no explosions, no soldiers, just wind, clouds, the distant suggestion of a city, a living one. Kira's eyes burned. Tears blurred the screen.
I thought you only wanted sound.
Supervisor Delta murmured quietly. Kira realized with a jolt that the older woman had turned the visual feed on purpose. Their eyes met. Behind Delta's, something vast and dangerous lived, something that had survived years in the highest, most watched level of the city.
You've seen it before.
Kira whispered.
Many times.
Delta said.
And I've watched others see it for the first time. Most of them break.
Why show me?
Kira's voice shook.
Because you already started breaking when you came here.
Delta said simply.
Only a fool or a rebel tries to trace shipment routes these days.
Kira's throat closed. Her collar burned hot.
You knew!
She rasped. Delta tapped a control. The camera feed vanished, replaced by the scrolling intake data once more. The second ring on her collar dimmed.
I didn't know it was you,
she said. But when Central requested a harmonizer, I suspected. The regime is watching you.
Operator 11K.
But it's not very good at understanding why people do things. It only knows how to measure that they do them.
Are you resistance?
The word felt foreign. Delta's smile was small and bitter.
That implies organization, plans. We have very little of that these days. The regime squeezed most of it out long ago. What's left are fractures, individuals who see too much.
Kira's heart hammered.
Why don't they just kill you?
They like me,
Delta said.
I keep their air clean, and I've learned how to think treasonous thoughts quietly.
She tapped her second collar ring.
This is an adjustment device. It teaches you where not to let your mind go. With enough practice, you can hide whole continents of thought behind a calm surface.
Kira swallowed.
So why help me?
Delta looked at her for a long moment.
When you trace a shipment and see the word surface civilian grid,
she said softly.
There are only two responses. You can run straight to the regime and confess your confusion, begging them to rewrite your brain. Or you can try to act like nothing has changed. The regime watches both. It waits. I was like you once, curious enough to reach but not yet wise enough to hide it. Someone help me. I am returning the favor.
Kira stared at the blank monitor where the blue sky had been.
The air is safe,
she said numbly.
For the most part,
Delta said.
There are polluted zones, war ruins, but there are also cities, farms, markets, people who have never seen a concrete ceiling in their whole lives.
People the regime says are our enemy.
They are not at war,
Delta said.
Not anymore. Maybe not ever in the way we were told. They trade, they argue, they live under their own little councils and corporations. Some worship the regime as a distant provider of goods. Some barely think of it at all.
Kira's head spun.
The food we grow,
she whispered.
the resources we mine, the things we're told are shipped to soldiers on the front.
Go to them.
Delta finished.
To their shelves, their tables, their children. They pay for it. Not with money you'd recognize, but with labor, products, data. The regime likes balance sheets. Somewhere up there, we're a very profitable line item.
But the war...
The war is a story,
Delta said.
It keeps us obedient and grateful. It gives them an excuse for any shortages or price hikes. Support our troops, they say, and our sweat fills their markets.
Her mouth twisted.
The regime is the only true enemy. It sits in the middle, feeding on both halves.
Kira couldn't feel her hands.
We could go up.
She said.
We could just walk out, breathe that air, talk to them.
Delta's gaze hardened.
The regime controls the vent towers,
she said.
Anyone going up without authorization is tagged as an invasive contaminant. Drones intercept. Sometimes they kill outright. Sometimes they capture. I don't know what happens after.
Kira thought of the chips wrapper in her floor, the tower in the footage, the slab-changing slogan.
How many of us know?
She asked. Delta shrugged.
A few dozen, maybe. 100. People in key positions who've seen under the curtain long enough that murder would disrupt things more than deprogramming helps. Most choose to survive, to bend and not break. They hoard small truths like rats with crumbs.
And you?
Kira asked.
Did you ever try to leave?
Delta's eyes slid to the ceiling.
I tried once,
She said.
I got far enough to taste rain.
Kira's breath caught.
The collar nearly killed me.
Delta added calmly.
Central tracked my bio readings climbing beyond permitted thresholds. They locked my muscles. I woke up back here in a correction chair with my memories scrubbed at the edges, but they didn't get everything.
She tapped her temple.
I still remember the taste of it, wet and cold and real.
Silence hummed between them. Finally, Kira said,
Why show me this? Just to torture me?
Delta's mouth softened.
So you can choose what kind of broken you want to be.
She said.
Some people, once they know, fold themselves back into the regime's story. They volunteer for deep harmonization. Let the voice rewrite them. They live out their days smiling and chanting, never remembering they ever doubted. It's a kind of peace. Others fight in small ways, tampering with shipments, leaking information through tiny cracks. Most of them vanish eventually, but they do something. Then there are the ones who try to reach the surface.
She held Kira's gaze.
They rarely get a second chance.
Kira thought of the casualty counter, of the workers in the cafeteria arguing about raids that never happened, of children reciting war pledges for soldiers who might not exist.
We toil,
She whispered. Delta's eyes glinted.
They fall.
She said.
we endure.
Kira finished.
We endure what, exactly?
The older woman smiled, small and sharp.
Now you're asking the right questions.
Kira returned to level 11 changed. Outwardly, nothing was different. She walked the same corridors, ate the same mash, sat at the same terminal. Her collar hummed its usual watchful hum. Inside, something had cracked open. The city's concrete ceilings no longer felt like the top of the world. They felt like the underside of a lid. She moved carefully, thought carefully. She practiced hiding the flickers of rage and wild hope until the collar registered her as just another slightly stressed, slightly tired worker. She didn't try to sabotage the regime. Not yet. She did something smaller. Every day, thousands of files passed through her hands. War bulletins, production stats, narrative alignments. She had always accepted the voice's scripts, smoothing them into history. Now, here and there, she made tiny cuts. A casualty number adjusted down instead of up. A war victory phrased as a stalemate. A shipment description that mentioned redistribution instead of supporting the troops. Meaningless individually, invisible in the torrent. But records had power. She knew that better than anyone. If enough small lies slipped in, maybe one day someone else would see the gaps and start asking. In her bunk, late at night, she would take out the chips wrapper and trace the slogan with her thumb. Above or below, we share the same sky. She knew now exactly how true that was. On the slab above the transit tunnel, the slogan stayed as it had been rewritten. We toil, they fall. We endure. Kira read it every morning. Sometimes in her head she changed one word. We toil, they live, we endure. She didn't know yet which they she meant. The surface civilians? The regime? The few like Delta, clinging to memories of rain? She didn't know if she would ever taste the sky or feel wind on her own face. But she knew this. The war was not what they said. And somewhere above the concrete and lies, under the same stretch of sky, people laughed and traded and ate food grown by hands that had never seen the sun. One day, somewhere in the flow of shipments and stories, there would be a crack big enough to slip through. When it came, Kira intended to be ready. Until then, she would do what she'd always done. She would work. She would watch. And, as quietly as she could, she would refuse to let the regime own her memories. That, in a city built on rewritten history, was the smallest and the greatest act of rebellion.